Hello, everyone, and welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for Maundy Thursday. Today begins in the Christian church what is referred to as the Paschal Triduum, the 3 days of the Easter culmination. So today's video and tomorrow's video aren't going to be scriptural. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we're doing. To set things up, I'll explain Maundy Thursday begins the Paschal Triduum with what I will describe later on. Then there's Good Friday, which is, of course, the death of Jesus on the cross, first the trial with Pilate, and then the death of Jesus on the cross. And then Holy Saturday after dusk would be then the Easter Vigil, when we have the first Eucharist of Easter. Many people wait until Easter Day, but in the Anglican tradition, many congregations will come together after the sun goes down so that we can celebrate when the Sabbath is over. We can celebrate the empty tomb. It's a really touching, moving service. And I'll talk a little bit more about that probably tomorrow in preparation for Saturday. But today I'd like to talk to you about Maundy Thursday. Maundy Thursday is the night that that Jesus and his disciples gathered together in the upper room to celebrate the Passover feast. And they did, preparation for the Passover feast. As they did so, they gathered together, they broke bread, they drank wine, they had a feast. And one of the things that Jesus did in that time was he washed their feet. Now, it would be traditional that the host would wash the feet, or someone from the host's home would wash the feet of travelers, because we didn't have paved roads back then, and people would walk often in sandals. Their feet would be dusty. That makes sense. And what is the best way to make someone feel at home, to feel like they've been welcomed with hospitality, than to make sure they're clean? We offer our restrooms to people before a meal that they might go wash their hands and freshen up before the meal. Same thing, only it was for the feet, for Jesus' time. And so Jesus, rather than simply allowing the person who owned the home, Jesus was the host, and so he washed the disciples' feet. Friends of mine from Louisville, who I had an incredible opportunity to get to know this past summer, Kim and Jerry, sent me this beautiful icon for my consecration, and the timing was absolutely perfect. It came in on the weekend, and I picked it up on Saturday, and it's stunning. And as you can see, it is Jesus washing the feet of his disciples. And if you might notice that there are indeed 12 disciples. Judas is among them. After yesterday's conversation about Judas, I think it's important to point out that Jesus, although he knew what was going to happen, continued to do what he was called to do, which was to serve. He washed their feet. And so part of the Maundy Thursday service in the Anglican tradition anyway is the washing of feet. It's just a ritual washing. We don't get soap and things like that out and wash both feet. We simply ask the people come forward, remove a sock or a stocking, and we wash one of their feet as a symbol of who we are as servants. We are all called as deacons, priests, and bishops. We are first and foremost always deacons, which means to be a servant. And it's because Christ himself was a servant. And there is no higher thing you can do than to serve as Christ served. So on Thursday, this afternoon, normally the service happens again in the evening. In the cathedral, we're going to try something different. We're doing all of our services this week, Monday through Friday at noon, for those folks who have difficulty coming out. A lot of our congregations these days are older folks, and getting out in the evening, especially in the cold and the dark, is very difficult. So we thought we would try our Maundy Thursday service at noon. While not really theologically correct, it is pastorally, I think, a good move. So we'll see how this works. But Father Jacob, who is going to be a military chaplain, he's a phenomenal preacher. If you ever have a chance to hear Jacob Friesen preach, please do. He is a great preacher. He is celebrating this week because, of course, our dean, Don Bernhardt, he is grieving the loss of his wife, Heather. Her funeral will be next week. So the cathedral team has stepped up with the diocesan staff to make sure that everything happens as need be. And Jacob has stepped into that role beautifully. So he will be celebrating at that service, and he and I will both take part in washing people's feet. It's extremely important to me, especially this year. I've done it every year since I was ordained. I have participated in the washing of feet, but especially this year as a bishop, it is extremely important to me that I make sure that I do this humble act. It is also a humbling act to take another's foot, especially the way we treat feet in our society. We seem to be embarrassed of them. But to take another's foot and pour warm water over it and caress that foot and massage it, and then what I do is I trace the sign of the cross on the top of the foot, and as I'm holding their foot, I say a prayer for whoever it is that I am serving. And it is a powerful and moving moment for me. And so tomorrow, Jacob and I, with other Anglican priests from around the world, will participate in this ritual washing of feet, following in the footsteps of Christ, in the servanthood of Christ. I'm going to put the icon down. It's a little heavy. Part of also the Maundy Thursday service is the recognition that that is the night that Jesus instituted the Last Supper, or what Paul went on to refer to as communion, the agape meal. And Jesus calls his people together, his disciples together. And I think it should be noted that there's nothing to indicate that there were only the 12 disciples. We know that there were other women and other people around Jesus all the time, supporting him. They're not very often mentioned specifically in the Gospels. So the fact that they're not mentioned specifically in the Gospel and the stories about the Last Supper and the institution of the Lord's meal does not indicate to me that they weren't there. But we know about the 12. So Jesus instituted the Lord's Supper, and he told them, when you break the bread, when you take this bread, you're eating my body. And when you drink the wine, you are drinking my blood. And as for those who are not familiar with the Christian tradition, that sounds really bad. It sounds cannibalistic. It is not meant to. It is meant to remind us that when we receive the bread and we receive the wine, we are receiving Christ into ourselves. It's like when you love someone, when you fall in love with someone and all you want to do is hold their hand. You want to hold them, you want to be close to them. Or a child who crawls up into his or her mom or dad's lap just because they want to feel close to them. When we receive communion, that is essentially what we're doing. We are receiving Christ, Jesus, as close to us as we possibly can. And by receiving him into our bodies, we are receiving Christ into our bodies. We are allowing ourselves to be filled with the presence of Jesus Christ. And if Jesus fills our very presence with his presence, then we are more able to go into the world to share his presence with others. It's as simple as that in my mind. I've not dumbed it down. I have simplified it. Theologically, people might get very frustrated with me for that, but that's essentially what we're doing. Is when Jesus did that, he was saying to them, I'm going to be gone. He was foreshadowing what was to happen. He was giving them a hint of what was going to happen the next day. They probably did not understand that, but what he was saying to them was, remember these words. Whenever you do this, whenever you gather together and you break the bread and you drink the wine, do it in my name. I am with you always. I will be with you. And he was telling them that no matter how you might feel tomorrow, what things might happen in the future, you cannot be separated from me because you have my love for you. And this is a symbol. This is a way that we can recognize that we are receiving that love, not just into our arms, but into our very selves. And so there was the institution of what we refer to as the Mass, or Eucharist, or Holy Communion. The next thing that we do in the Anglican service anyway is we prepare the church for Good Friday. And this is a very difficult thing. Many years I have been blessed with my husband's assistance, and he would coordinate the servers in the altar guild and all the people who would remove things. As I was reading a piece of scripture about Jesus being in the Garden of Gethsemane and asking his disciples if they could not stay awake with him for just a little while, and they fell asleep, and he was left alone, crying out to God, why do I have to do this? Can you not take this cup from me? But responding into his own petition, but if thy will be done, if this is what I must do, then I will do it. And I've always had my head down looking at my book to read the gospel, very powerful, moving gospel. And when I would look up, when I was done reading the gospel, Rob would have had everybody working diligently to remove all symbols of the church. The cross would be gone. The hangings, the colored hangings would be gone. The Bibles, the candles, there would be nothing but a bare altar. We would take off our vestments first, and I would be standing and he would be standing in our black cassocks. Tomorrow I will stand in my purple cassock. Tomorrow evening this evening, I will stand in my purple cassock as we strip all these things. My ring and my cross, my pectoral cross, will come off, and they will lay it on the table, on the altar, and removed from the church. All symbols of hope, all symbols of joy are removed, because we are reminded that when we leave that place, when we come back on Good Friday, we are coming back to, essentially, it's the absence of Jesus, that horrible, heartbreaking moment when we recognize that what our lives have done, what the world has done, that what we need to do, what we are recognizing, what Jesus gave up of himself for us. More about that tomorrow. But in this part of the service, we are stripping the altar. We are clearing all of these symbols of the church from the building, from the church itself. In some cases, in some churches, we won't be doing this in the cathedral, but I've done it many times. What we do is we take the body and blood of Christ that has been consecrated, and we have a reserved sacrament. We place it on what is referred to as an altar of repose with candles, representing that Christ is present. And then people would sit in the church and pray all night long. Response to Jesus' call, could you not come and pray with me for an hour? And people would be invited to come and sit in the church in the night. And the only light is the lights flickering from the candles that surround the body and blood of Christ. It's a vigil with the sacrament is what it's called. And it is a very powerful, powerful thing. I do invite you, if you are able, to find a picture, an icon maybe, or something that reminds you of Christ, something that symbolizes Jesus for you, maybe a cross you wear, or something like that, a palm cross, and place it somewhere in your home this night, and take some time, some extended time, long enough that you kind of wonder what you're doing, long enough that you pay attention to this is getting uncomfortable, long enough to recognize that you are one of the ones that Jesus has asked, will you not sit and pray with me? Stay awake with me. Take some time to do that this day, this night, and allow yourself to enter into that incredible sense of what is happening for us on this holiest of weekends. Thank you for joining me today for Maundy Thursday. I will be back for Good Friday, and then back for Easter Day with Gospel on the Go. God bless you, and I pray that this Maundy Thursday may be a challenging day, a day of spirituality and wondering and questioning and pondering. May it bring you closer to understanding the fullness of what Jesus has done for all of God's children. God bless.